Basically, we found out there was a plaque being unveiled in All Hallows for All Hallows Airfield, and I got from my local magazine publishing perspective. I found out about that as a local news story, and I knew about not as much as Kenneth, but I knew some information about Kingsnorth Airfield and its airship, particularly its airship perspective. And so I got in touch with Kenneth and I said, is there any plans for a memorial in Kingsnorth? And he says, yes, there is something in the back of his mind, because obviously Kenneth explained to me at that point what the main project is all about, trying to put these memorials all across the country, marking every airfield potentially in the country. And he said, yeah, absolutely fantastic. And what we can do with Kingsnorth, because it's so particularly important, especially during the First World War, we'll get a full-size memorial because it's quite significant. So that's what we did, and that's what we've got here today. I'm not too knowledgeable about Kingsnorth, but I do know some background about it. This of course will add to the educational perspective, so it will start to provide an educational perspective to locals, residents, and obviously visitors. And it can obviously commemorate the servicemen, women who are here, the squadrons which were based here as well, and it can start to add that heritage quality to it and start to commemorate and start to provide an educational and memorial aspect to Kingsnorth, and hopefully make sure that memory and that history stays alive for the community.
Okay, thanks very much, and thank you very much for all your help so far, greatly appreciated. Well, again, just to confirm, my name is Kenneth Barrowman. I'm the Director General, the founder and head of the Airfields of Britain Conservation Trust, which, just in case you haven't heard of us, is the world's first national airfield charity. We've also got a very popular 3,000-page website, for example. Just type in the letters ABCT and you'll find the website extremely easily. Well, one of the main things we do is, Michael just said, that we erect commemorative memorials for disused airfields across the UK. So we've already erected one of our special memorial plaques, not for cost reasons by the way, just for practicality, just up the road here at All Hallows. It was a World War I fighter landing ground. Now this is our main force memorial. So just give you a quick background of Kingsnorth airships history. Now I have to use the word airship because there was a separate Kingsnorth airfield in Kent in World War II. It was a fighter landing ground, notably used by the Americans around about D-Day. So it was totally separate. But we have to differentiate that between there and the airship base here. If ever there was a really forgotten, maybe even superstar airfield, it would be, one could very reasonably say, Kingsnorth amongst so many other places. Like for example, yesterday we were at Langley near Slough. Now that is similar in one sense to Kingsnorth because a hugely important place that won a world war but is now completely forgotten pretty much. Now Kingsnorth was without question one of the most important airfields anywhere in Britain in World War I. It dates from before the conflict started. There was a lot of expenditure involved here, but it was one of the earliest airship stations anywhere in Britain. Construction work started quite a bit before World War I. Now I've seen pretty much all the records at the National Archives in London, and it's fascinating just the social impact detail of nothing else. There was a local farmer, for example, who, my word, he demanded his pound of flesh, not least when it came to financial compensation. I soon remember it was £5,000 he wanted, which was a lot of money in those days. And he was so determined to get every inch of his way. He said, well, I want this amount of money, and you've also got to make sure I can collect the crops, for example, before the construction starts. And he got everything from the Admiralty. You know, he really dug his heels in. So eventually the airship station opened or was commissioned in April 1914. And as you'll see in the memorial, we just say April 14. There's a slight question mark about the opening date, and it all revolves around as well the hugely important initial figure here, who was the commander of this base, Wing Commander Neville Osborne, who was a very important person, not just to do with Kingsnorth, but with the early development of airships in the UK. So this place was a mixture of a place for airship construction, come experimentation and training. Now, eventually the training moved away to the world's most famous training airfield, Cranwell in Lincolnshire, at the end of 1916. And it was also used as well for early airship patrols. Some of the earliest airships in Britain took off from here for patrols over the English Channel, for example. But the two main areas that Kingsnorth was involved in were construction and experimentation. So on the construction side of things, all the major airship types that Britain used in World War I were devised and then actually constructed here. So you had the submarine scout or SS type, then perhaps the most famous World War I airship type of all, the coastal or C-class type, and then another quite famous type, the North Sea design. So a lot of these airships would have been used at all the other airship bases and mooring out sites right across UK, from example, say East Fortune near Edinburgh, Pulham in East Anglia, Mullion in Cornwall. All these places across UK, they would all have had connections with Kingsnorth. Now on the experimental side, this place, as you can find again at the National Archives, it carried out enormously important work in developing and improving airships. However, there was a real tragedy involved because Neville Osborne was actually killed during one experiment in the early part of 1916. What happened was he and a colleague were trying to operate this, if you can imagine a dirigible with a biplane fighter underneath. So the idea was for the craft to hover in the air until Zeppelins came in sight, and then the biplane fighter would detach from the envelope. Now on this occasion, unfortunately, there was a problem with the decoupling. The aircraft side-slipped. One of the person along with Neville Osborne fell out of the aircraft and was drowned in the Medway. And meanwhile, Osborne himself was very tragically killed when the aircraft crashed in the Strood railway station. Real tragedy. But they kept going through this terrible event, and it's fair to say that by the end of World War I, Kingsnorth played an incredibly important part in the winning of World War I. And here's, above all, simply why. Some people tend to forget that by about 1917, Germany's U-boat fleet came perilously close to literally starving this country into surrender. But if it wasn't for the efforts of everyone here at Kingsnorth, they overcame the submarine threat between all the aerial components, and of course not forgetting the Royal Navy. And this is simply how. U-boat commanders after World War I ended said when they were being interrogated that whenever they saw anything from an airship to a tiny biplane flying overhead, they kept below the waves. So the proof of the pudding was that in the last year and a half or so of World War I, the amounts of Allied tonnage lost, and therefore in turn lives saved with all the shipping crews, thankfully plummeted. Not many submarines were actually sunk by aircraft, including airships, but they had the most phenomenal deterrent effect. It's a bit like, you could say, coming right up to the present day, something like the Trident nuclear missile system. Slightly similar in a way. It's the passive defence. So this place should always just be remembered for that alone. All the millions upon millions of lives it unquestionably saved. After World War I, airships, for various reasons, rapidly fell out of favour. But it wasn't quite the end for Kingsnorth, because although some people think that the base here closed in 1919, that wasn't actually the case. It was then used in a storage capacity to hold and then supply, often even abroad, kite balloons, which incidentally played a big part in winning the World War I as well. So eventually the depot here closed in the summer of 1921, and then you can find in official records what are called Air Ministry weekly orders that Kingsnorth later on that summer was passed to a rather notorious government department called the Disposal Board. So what that means in layperson's terms is that the airfield was officially closed and then it was handed over to the government for eventual disposal and sale. So why I say that is that in 1922, the base was then sold off. It was used for a few years by a wood pulping company, and this is far better known, of course. From round about 1930, there was the Berrywiggins oil refinery, and then, of course, more recently there was the Kingsnorth power station that, from the 1970s till it closed fairly recently, and then you've now got the industrial estate here. Now, we've just learned, just when we got here a little while ago, we actually thought that there were about 2 or 3 buildings still in the industrial estate. Now, I'm very sorry to report that they were actually demolished earlier this year. Very sad. But Kingsnorth is still tangible. Now this is another bit of a mystery. I don't know whether you may be aware of this, but up the road from here there's a farm called Moat Farm to the west of All Hallows Village. Now, part of one of the airship sheds there is now used, the roof is now used as a farm building, and it's listed. Although there's a bit of a question mark over its original, where it was originally positioned and so on. But it does appear to be part of the airship base here. So, although the base may have largely gone, this place is hugely important, and it always will be. But this is the case with all of our airfields, whether active or disused. And therefore we can only say to you, as we said yesterday, for example, at Langley and on our travels, just within reason, please do all you possibly can to help save, honour and protect our airfields, active and disused, and of course not forgetting all the personnel who served at them. Because if nothing else, they hugely affect our everyday lives right across the board. As we like to say, jobs, facilities, services, you name it, even right down to our health. That's how important our airfields are. So just within reason, just do all you can to help them, because just always remember that for every single one of us, all of us here, our families, friends, etc., they hugely matter and they're helping us. So it's about time maybe they need a wee bit of help, like they should have had many years ago. I recognised this way back in the 1970s when I was just a youngster. It was a chance encounter with an airfield in East Anglia, and even at that young age it just got me thinking that something really had to be done to help these places and also the people who serve them. So the great news is that, we're not a talking shop with what we're doing. We are really making things happen in advanced society, saving people's jobs, tracing families, all sorts of things. So this is hugely important beyond all belief. And therefore, again, thank you all very much for coming. And we are now extremely honoured, and again, thank you so much for all your help, to unveil what is now ABCT's 160th memorial to yet another unique and utterly irreplaceable assets, in this case, Kingsnorth Airship Airfield. Thank you all very much.